There are about 23 grape varietals in the Rhone Valley. A handful of those are white, and this week we are going to be reviewing my favorite among those. And in this week's tip of the week, we're going to talk about all of these weird French terms you're going to find on French wine bottles and hopefully make it a little less intimidating to pick one out. All of that coming up next. Hello and welcome to Wine This Week with Scott Leek. This is a great week to be reviewing the white wine Marsanne from the Rhone Valley in France. It's kind of hot out, and this is a great wine for days like today. You're often going to find this blended with another Rhone varietal called Roussanne, and they have a kind of an interesting yin and yang component to them. Marsanne tends to be fairly low in acidity, whereas Roussanne is a little higher in acidity. So it's almost like having sweet and sour sauce or peanut butter and jelly. The two have nothing in common in many ways, but when blended together, something magical happens. This today happens to be a 97% bottle of Marsanne with just 3% of the Roussanne added in. I'm excited to give this one a try. It comes from the northern Rhone region of St. Joseph. You can also find this being made in the US now, and particularly there's a winery in Central Valley, Paso, Robles in California called Tablas Creek, who actually took vines from Châteauneuf-du-Pape of this varietal, brought it to the US, and they're making great Roussanne there now. So you're starting to find more of this made in the United States. I still think, for my palate, the original from the Northern Rhone is kind of the best version of Marsanne. We're gonna give it a try and find out. This week's wine is the 2018 Roussanne from Domaine Corby in St. Joseph in the northern Rhone Valley. Comes in at 13% alcohol, and I want to say I spent about 20 bucks on it. Now, right off the bat, I can tell like this is darker than a lot of other white wines. I mean, you can see there is some pretty deep golden color. I mean, this just makes me think of like a nice yellow, delicious apple. Hoo-hoo, that's a fun nose. Oh my goodness. There's something there I can't pinpoint just yet, but I like it. I swear I haven't been drinking just yet. I'm just having fun with this wine. So there is some apple. I'm getting some spice I can't quite identify. Pear, maybe. No, not lemon. I've read that this can have some aromas of quince. I admittedly am not familiar with that fruit, but maybe that's the fruit component I can't quite identify. And I'm getting a little bit of apricot as well, which is just awesome. And a hint of vanilla. So this particular winemaker, this is a small kind of boutique place. It's, I believe, two brothers, fourth generation, making wines in the Rhone Valley. And they do use some oak barrels for fermentation, and I don't believe they do in aging. It's not uncommon to find that in Marsanne, whether it's in Rhone or in California. So for those of you who like kind of oaky, rich, full Chardonnays, this might be a fun alternative to try. Let's give it a taste. Awesome. Love the weight on this. Ooh, fun stuff in the finish too. So it's mostly dry. I'm going to call this off dry. There's a hint of sweetness to it, but I'm not going to call this a sweet wine by any stretch. But there is some enough to make me call it off dry. There is a little bit of acidity, more than what I would have expected. I'm going to measure it one more time. Yeah, all right. I started drooling there a little bit. I'm going to go medium on the acidity. It does not remind me of like, a crisp Sauvignon Blanc where it's just like, bam, in your face acidity. Nice medium acidity, which I think is very well balanced with the body on this. This is a fuller, weightier white wine. So if you like your white wines nice and thin and just go down quick and easy, this might not be quite your style. It's not quite as viscous as, let's say, a Viognier is, but I do like the body on this a lot. This is really fun. The alcohol is not all that noticeable. I'm not getting much heat. It's at 13%. So I'm going to call it medium on the alcohol. And a decent length on the finish too. Kind of a medium plus finish. A lot of things I'm liking about this. On the palate, I do get some of the things that I noticed on the... Oh, I'm getting a little heat now. I did notice kind of that yellow apple. Not a green, not a tart apple, but a nice yellow apple. I do get some pear on this. And there's something that kind of reminds me of, well, I'll just call it, it's like creme brulee. There's a little bit of that vanilla custard kind of taste to it, but it's not like the vanilla from the oak. Like, I'm trying to differentiate the two. It's not that kind of vanilla. It's more creme brulee. I'm sure it's from the same thing, but I'm just trying to kind of differentiate the taste a little bit. So I do like some of that kind of creme brulee like feel. And again, the weight of it kind of reminds me almost of a custard. It's not like that, but not like you could just drink creme brulee out of a glass. God, wouldn't that be awesome if you could drink creme brulee out of a glass? Again, I swear I haven't been drinking it today. So I can see why a Marsanne needs some other wines blended with it a little bit. And maybe just that 3% of Roussanne is doing just what it needs. Maybe it would be a little bit off balance without it. It is mostly 97% Marsanne. But again, because this is normally a low acid wine, I expected it to be a little off balance. They even oftentimes are going to plant, and I think this one in particular, they plant on the northern slopes, which is the opposite of what you know most places try to do. They try to use the southern slopes so they get tons of sunshine, tons of sunlight, they get good ripening. This ripens pretty well. The north-facing slope is actually going to help keep that ripeness down a little bit and maybe preserve some of the acidity. When it gets too ripe and too full, the acidity tends to drop as that sugar level rises. So this is really balanced. It's got good intensity of the flavors. I mean, it's not popping me in the mouth over the top intense. And I wouldn't say that the complexity of it is all over the place either. There's not a ton of different things going on. And again, that finish is really nice. I like the length of this finish. This is going to be really good with some food. So all in, I'm going to call this a 6.5 point wine on my 10-point scale. So this is definitely above average. I'm gonna drink a fair amount of this tonight. And in terms of food and wine pairings, you know, I'm thinking of that kind of Mediterranean diet. This is near, you know, the Rhone Valley is getting close to the Mediterranean in southeastern France, almost near Italy a little bit as well. So I'm thinking some shellfish, like I'm gonna have shrimp with this tonight, and I think that's gonna be an awesome pairing. And because of the weight of this, I'm thinking of matching that with the food. So I'm thinking a creamy, maybe a lemony type of sauce would be really good with anything you're gonna pair this with, whether it's just doing lemon chicken or whether you're doing some type of, maybe like an Alfredo, shrimp and Alfredo, something like that. There's a lot of things you can do with this. This is gonna be fine by itself, but I think this is going to be really good paired with some seafood, maybe some poultry. There's that apricot I mentioned. I did get a little bit of that in the palate as well, and so that makes me think of like a peach compote going with some pork might be good with this too. I think this would work with a lot of different things. So give Marsanne a try. It is not a terribly common white wine varietal, but certainly one I would say is worth seeking out. When it comes to decoding French wine labels, every region's a little bit different within France. Burgundy might have one set of rules, Bordeaux might have another, but there are some common things. And so I'm going to start off with a basic, short and sweet, to the point tip. And if you want to listen beyond that for a little bit more of a 2.0, feel free to do so. But in short, what you need to know is that French wine labels generally do not put the grape on the label. They put the region. And you need to, as the consumer, know what the grapes are in that region, kind of like how they do it in Italy. However, I'm going to even say that's not all that important. So for example, today we tasted a Marsanne, and if I described a wine that you thought, well, that sounds good, I might go out and try a Marsanne. Well, what if I didn't use the name of the grape? What if I simply said, I'm having a Northern Rhone Blanc today, and that's all I told you, and it still sounded good? Well, you'd go out and you'd try to find a Northern Rhone Blanc and try it, and it doesn't really matter what the name of the grape is in that case. What we know is that particular grape and that wine that I had today came from a very specific region in France, and all you need to do is go and find a bottle from that specific region in France. So whether we call it by the region or whether we call it by the grape, I don't think matters all that much. Just simply know that when you're having it and you like it or you don't like it, make note of it, and next time either get that grape again or get that region again or don't. So that's the short and sweet version I'm going to say when it comes to picking out French wines and what you need to know about the label. Let's spend a few minutes going a little bit more in depth, talking about some of the terms that you're going to see, what those French words mean, and how that can maybe enhance picking out a bottle and deciding between one or another within a certain region. In France, wines are governed by a set of laws, same as most agricultural products in France, and the governing system that they use is known as the AOC, or the AOP as it's recently been renamed, the Appellation Originale Protégée. And wines particularly fall under this classification system in a sense in a hierarchy. And each region is done a little bit differently, and that makes it kind of confusing at times, where Rhone might handle it one way and use certain terms, and Bordeaux differently, and Burgundy differently, and Alsace, etc. So a couple of the basics you need to know is that generally speaking, think of this as a hierarchy or a pyramid. And there's a lot of wines at the base level because there are fewer requirements for producing those wines. And as you move up the hierarchy in quality and requirements, they get more stringent, and so fewer people make them, they get more expensive. So at the top level, you might have something like this where it says Grand Cru Classé on the bottle of Bordeaux. So Grand means great, Cru means growth, Class A indicates we're talking about the classification system. So this is the great growth of Margaux. Margaux being a more specific subregion inside of Bordeaux. And it even says, instead of AOC, it says Appellation Margaux Contrôlée. So these are some things that give us an indication that this is a higher quality Bordeaux, as opposed to this one that doesn't say Grand Vin on it, doesn't go into much detail about where it's from. One other key aspect that you're going to look for is this term, and it's present on every bottle of French wine, and that is this term mise en bouteille à château, or in this case over here with the Rhone and the Burgundy, it's going to say mise en bouteille à domaine. That means that these these wines were produced on the property of the chateau or the domain, where each region calls their chateau or their domain. It's all the same thing, the winery. These were produced at the winery. This one, however, this is a very nice bottle of wine, but it's a little bit cheaper, it's a little bit lower quality, it doesn't have the same strict standards. And we know that by looking at on the back, it says mise en bouteille à F.3350. It starts to give us the address of where this was bottled, as opposed to saying this was bottled at the chateau. That's an indication that maybe this is a little bit lower on the hierarchy system, that this doesn't have the same strict requirements. So that mise en bouteille and seeing where it was it bottled à chateau or à domaine, tells us an awful lot about the quality of this particular bottle of wine. Seeing things like Grand Vin de Burgundy or Grand Cru Classé, the word grand means great. You see that on a bottle, that's also another indication that this is maybe higher up in that hierarchy system. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of more confidence when it comes to picking out a French label. I know there's a lot of terms. We look at it and like, what in the world does that mean? But just know again that the regions have very specific rules, and the grapes grown in each region are limited by those laws. So if you're going to have a Rhone wine, you're going to have a Bordeaux wine, you're going to have a Burgundy, it doesn't necessarily matter that you know what the grapes are, because they're going to be pretty much the same as you try different chateaus or domains from that region. If you like a Rhone wine, you're probably gonna like a lot of Rhone wines. If you like a Bordeaux, you're probably gonna like a lot of Bordeaux. So just knowing when you go in and you start to try and experiment with some of these new ones, knowing the region and a couple of these key terms are hopefully gonna help you be a little bit more adventurous and venture out and try things like a Marsanne. Thank you for watching another episode of Wine This Week. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like and subscribe. Join me next week as we move on to another varietal that I have never tried before, but am excited to give it a shot. This is known as Mencia from Spain. Until then, keep trying new wines, and as always, cheers.